And I'd like to welcome everyone to the 51st meeting of the 7th Council of the Municipality of South Dundas. We are once again in virtual land tonight, connecting via Facebook Live. So welcome to everyone there and welcome to council and staff. I'd like to call on the clerk for a roll call, please.
Mayor Byvelds?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Gardner?
Here.
Councillor Lewis?
Here.
Councillor Mellon?
Here.
Councillor Wells?
Here.
CEO Garrity?
Here.
Treasurer McMillan?
Here.
Deputy Treasurer Mason?
Here.
Deputy Clerk Robert? Here. Directors of Environmental Service Watson?
Here.
Director of Transportation Heineman?
Here.
CVO Lowy?
Here.
And Clerk Brunt.
Okay. Once again, welcome. Confirmation of agenda. I believe there's some consent items being pulled, Madam Clerk. What are the letters?
It would be it would be the total of 9J. We'll just pull 9J as a total, and they can ask from the questions from there of the activity reports.
Okay. 9J will be pulled. And that'll become G under discussion. Anything else from council? Seeing none, any disclosure of pecuniary interest, material nature thereof tonight? No. I will declare conflict on the discussion concerning the Ontario Street reconstruction. In considering of the Westburg Curling Club ask, as I am a member. I will forward that paperwork later. Anything else from any other member of council? Seeing none, adoption minutes, please.
Moved by Councillor Wells, second by Councillor Mellon, that the minutes of the 49th regular council meeting and the minutes of the 50th special council meeting of the municipality of South Dundas be adopted as circulated.
Any discussion or issues? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote, please.
Mayor Byvelds?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Gardner?
Yes.
Councillor Lewis?
Yes.
Councillor Mellon?
Yes.
Councillor Wells?
Yes.
Motion passes. No delegations, petitions tonight, so we'll move on to action request. First one is TR 2020-06, Water Financial Report.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Gardner, second by Councillor Lewis, that the Council of the Municipality of South Dundas accept report TR 2020-06 to approve the South Dundas Regional Drinking Water System Financial Plan as presented.
Sarah, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So before you have our water financial report. Sean can speak a little bit more to the details of it if you'd like, but generally it's just a requirement under our Safe Drinking Water Act, OREG 453-07, that we report on the financial viability of the drinking water system. If Council has any questions, be happy to answer.
Okay, sorry about that. Deputy Treasurer Mason, any comments on this report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Sarah had said, the Safe Drinking Water Act requires that the municipality has a water license to sell water to its users. That license is renewed every 5 years. 2020 is a renewal year, and we need to report. Aqua produces the application for us to file with the ministry, and the financial report is one of the components that needs to go to Aqua via resolution to be attached to the application.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, questions, concerns, Deputy Mayor Gardner?
No comments or questions. Thank you.
Councilor Lewis,
No questions at this time.
Councilor Mellon,
Well, yeah, as far as the financials on this goes, I guess on page, I guess it's 24 of the agenda, the net financial assets, the debt, it cruises along, and then all of a sudden in 2023 to 2024, there's a big jump. The net financial assets keep coming down, and then all of a sudden, is there something planned in 24 that's going to push the net financial debt up from 18,000, it's down to 18,000 in 2023, and then all of a sudden it jumps to 304,000, almost 305,000. That was something that jumped out at me when I was going through the numbers.
Sean,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Mellon. The line you're looking at, Councillor Mellon, is the net financial assets, or if it were, it should be debt in brackets. So in the early years were in debt because of the loan with Ontario Infrastructure Ontario. But as you start seeing going out to 2020, 2021, that minus is actually reducing, which means we're getting closer to zero. And then in 2025, we're in the positive, which means we have almost eliminated our debt, and then we're in a positive financial asset position.
So in 2024, we're actually almost 305,000 in the black instead of okay, it's coming down. I see what you're saying now. Thank you, John. I was just wondering. I didn't realize it was that's how it was coming down.
that's it, Councilor Mellon?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Wells, anything?
Yes, Sean, I have one question. On going through the report on section 3 in the notes on line 4, there was something said about like a 2% increase, which we were going to do over the period, but then it said on contracted services due to inflation, if I believe. I'm trying to scroll down here, but it said like a 2% increase for contracted services. Can you fill me in on that, Sean? Like, do we just contract services? I'm assuming is what? Like whatever is done, do we just give them 2%? Because contracted services is a contract. So just clarify what I'm reading on that line 4, if that makes any sense.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Wells. Yes, the statement in the notes on number 4, inflation is applied to contracted services. In this case, contracted services is Aqua, and that there is an inflationary component in their contract where every year that they get an increase equal to the amount of inflation. I just used a number of 2%, which, all things being equal today, is probably low, but in the outer years might be more representative.
Okay, so that's when they give the contract to do a 3-year term or whatever. It's just it's in their contract is mandatory. It's a 2% increase. Is that correct?
It's in the contract document that they do get an inflationary increase every year.
Thank you, Sean.
Councilor Mellon?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Byville. Just a supplemental to, I checking my notes here. I guess on page 27, table 4, our annual surplus in 2019, where are we here? It takes a big jump in 2020 and 2021. Is that provincial funding that we're anticipating? The surplus goes from 102 in 19 to 460 in 2020, and then 1.7 in 2021. I just curious as to that number, especially in 2021, when it jumps that high, and in 2022 it drops way back again. Is that provincial funding that that causes that to jump to that surplus?
Go ahead, Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Mellon. Yes, what that is, Councillor, is that in 2020 and 2021 we've included the capital purchases for those 2 years, and the reason the surplus spikes is we need to show funding to come in to fund those capital. For 2020, it's Ontario Street, as we well know, and then in 2021 it's the potential reconstruction of the water towers, and we'll need funding to come in from that, whether it's from reserves or from the province or the federal government.
So because there's no fund. Wondering, like 2021, there was no funding, secured yet. And I just seen that big jump in the surplus in there, and I didn't know if that was I missed something or not. Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Anything else? Seeing none, I'll call the question, please. Madam Clerk?
Mayor Byvelds,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Gardner,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
Yes.
Councillor Mellon,
Yes.
Councillor Wells.
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on, next one is ES 2020-06, the Morseburg Waterfront Pathway Barricade Implementation.
Moved by Councillor Lewis, second by Councillor Mellon, that the Council of the Municipality of South Dundas accept report ES 2020-06 to permit staff to install a barricade along the east side of the parking lot, to the east side of the dockside grill, and along the south side of the existing ball diamond in Morseburg.
Danielle, welcome.
Good evening, Council. So in front of you this evening is a request. It's been brought to our attention that the pathway near the waterfront has become a little bit of a safety issue. We have some residents and even tourists that are using a walk pathway, so a pathway designed for walking and biking to drive their vehicles on. And this has become an issue, obviously, for several reasons. We have lots of children playing in that area, as well as seniors that sit out there to enjoy the water view. So it's staff's opinion that in order to keep those individuals safe, that we move forward with installing a barricade. The pictures are provided in your report of where we would suggest placing the barricades. We feel that this would ensure that those individuals keep safe, and that we're also ensuring the municipality is protected against any potential issues in the future with vehicles using a walk pathway. If you have any questions, I'd be willing to answer them.
Thank you. Start with Councillor Wells, please.
Hi, Danielle. Yeah, I went over the report. I've seen it plenty of times, people driving down there. I remember when they have the antique show and that, they drive from the ball diamond and that. But as far as driving across the parking lot and past the bathroom and that, I would agree with your report. Like barricades, stop them that way. Like if there is the event that they have the antique car show, which probably won't happen this year and all that, they come in by the ball diamond on the west side of the second ball diamond. But as of now, if they're going through there, it should be stopped, I think. Thank you.
Councillor Mellon?
Yeah, I have to agree with Danielle on a report and Councillor Wells. I think it's what is happening there is probably a recipe for disaster sooner or later. It's our pathway, and we're going to be exposed to a lot of liability there. I'm sure there are maybe some people that use that pathway to drive down, but it's not designed or built for car traffic and it's pedestrian traffic. And I think we need to have the barricades there to protect ourselves, but more importantly, to protect the residents that might be walking, especially with kids and whatnot.
Council Lewis.
I kind of disagree with my colleague. I sit at the boat dock every night between 4:30 and 6:30. I do see vehicles on the far pathway down by the hardball diamond. I've never seen vehicles on the pathway from the dock to the beach. The only thing that I see on that pathway is golf carts, and they think they own the path, but I've never seen a vehicle on that pathway itself. To me, I would most likely block the pathway down by the hardball diamond and put road barriers on the paths at each end. But there's a lot of senior citizens that enjoy sitting under the shade trees east of the dock bathroom. And that's my 2 cents worth. I think if we kind of got the golf carts off of that path, everything would be good. Thank you.
Mayor Gardner, please.
Thanks, Mayor Byveld. I agree actually with Councillor Lewis. I think that I see quite a few seniors that do drive behind the dock side and enjoy. I'd hate to see us prohibit them from doing that. As far as the other barricade, I think that we have to come up with a solution that's a bit better than that and also addresses not just this bike path, but also the one in Iroquois. There's been many times I've been at the Iroquois beach and there are dirt bikes or whatever racing up and down that bike path. And I think that we're probably, with it freshly paved, you're going to see more of that. So I think I don't know if a barricade or whether it's a case of putting bollards in so you're narrowing the access. So if you're on a bike, you can still go through there, but if you're on something a little wider, you're not going to be able to go through. I think in my mind, the barricade, something has to be done, but I think just completely blocking it off to all access, I don't necessarily agree that that's the way to do it.
Danielle, any more further comments, please?
So with regards to Deputy Mayor Gardner's comment, we would make sure we wouldn't block the pathway completely. It would be similar to what you were talking about with limiting the space for larger vehicles to access. There would still be a way for people to walk through as well as ride a bike through. The image doesn't really show that very well, so I apologize. But that would be the idea, so that we could continue to have through traffic, so bikes could go in and out easily, as well as walkers and joggers and whatnot. So that would be our intention. We have thought about putting signage up as well that it's motorized vehicles, so we would say only non-motorized vehicles would be able to use the pathway. So just to address both your questions there, that's what we were looking at doing with these barricades.
Yes, Deputy Mayor Gardner, go ahead.
Thank you, Danielle. That clears it up. As far as that's great along the bike path, and I do caution just the behind the dock side. I've never seen that abused, and unless we're going to do something with that parking lot, sometimes it's a way for the senior citizens to have more accessibility to the picnic tables under those trees. So, I would have maybe a broader look at that.
Okay. So a comment from myself. My understanding from the Morrisburg Waterfront Committee is that they do not like the vehicles going into the park as they are now. So for what staff is presenting, it is a start to where we need to get to, and I would suggest that we would support the motion. I would support the motion to do the barricades for now and see how they work out. If they work out or they make logical sense, and then we can do something permanent. If they don't work out, we can always remove what we had and go and see what else we need to do. But I think this is a good start. It's a park. It's not a parking lot. I know there's some people in our municipality that have a hard time challenge walking, and I sympathize with them. However, it's we need to get to a point where safety is more important, and I'm willing to support this motion as it is. So, anything further from any members of council? Deputy Mayor Gardner?
Yeah, just I forgot to mention it in my notes. If committees like the waterfront committee are consulted, it'd be helpful to have that in the report. Just so we know. I don't see it in there, so okay. That's just my only comment.
Okay. Anything further from any members of council? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote, please.
Mayor Byveld,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Gardner,
Yes.
Councillor Lewis,
No.
Councillor Mellon,
Yes.
Councillor Wells.
Yes.
Motion passes. Moving on to bylaws. First one is 2020-41 Community Food Share Agreement.
Moved by Councillor Wells, second by Deputy Mayor Gardner, that bylaw number 2020-41, being a bylaw to execute an agreement with the Community Food Share, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Ethan?
Thank you, Mayor Byvelds. Through you, before you, Council, is a bylaw to continue to rent space to the Community Food Share program at the Morris Big Arena. The agreement is for a 5-year term starting on July 1st, 2020. The only change from the previous agreement is a change with insurance. The organization has reviewed the agreement and is okay with the terms. And with that, I'd answer any questions Council has.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, questions, concerns from council on this motion, on this bylaw? Councilor Mellon?
Thank you, Mayor Byvelds. Ethan, I read the over your report and I agree with it, everything. The heat and hydro, is that picked up by South Dundas? Is that on our meter or is that separate to them?
I believe we cover the costs.
Okay.
Council.
I sort of thought that. I just wanted to check it. And I noticed there was a couple typos in the actual, I guess, legal wording of it on page 36. If I can get to page 36 here, it says, oh, I got to go back to my notes. There's a couple spots where it refers to the premise. It refers to as a promise. It's just it's a pretty minor typo, really, but it refers in there. Oh, I got to find it now. Yeah, at the top, provided that the event of a damage to the premises by the fire, lightning, or tempest, rent shall cease until the promise are rebuilt. And then the next paragraph, provided that where the promise becomes vacant, it's just 2 small typos in there. It's instead of premise, it says promise. But I don't know if we have to amend that. Legal binding, like that's an agreement we're going to have to sign with them. I don't know if that has to be changed beforehand or if we can make an amendment to it.
Yeah, we can make the amendments to the agreement prior to sending it to the Community Food Share Agreement to make sure that the wording's correct.
Yeah, they're the only two picked up on. We're just in case it ever comes back, the wording in there is just, yeah, okay. Other than that, no.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody's good? Okay, I'll make a few comments. I think this is something that we as municipality are proud to do for Community Food Share. That space became available when we did some jiggling around in the early 2010s, and we did meet with them last August, and they are thrilled with the space. It's worked out well for them and the community, so I think we as a municipality should be proud that we're doing this for Community Food Share and doing our share to keep them going. keeping their costs minimal as possible. So with that, I'll call the vote, please.
Mayor Byveld,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Gardner,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Mellon,
Yes.
Counselor Wells.
Yes.
The motion passes. Next bylaw is 2020-42, United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry Winter Maintenance Agreement.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Gardner, second by Counselor Mellon, that bylaw number 2020-42 being a bylaw to execute a winter maintenance agreement with the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, and to repeal bylaws number 2015-69 and 2018-69 be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Jeff, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So in front of you is the agreement between the municipality and the counties of SD&G for the winter maintenance of Stampville Road, currently located between County Road 1 and County Road 16. The municipality will look after the winter maintenance as of the third week of November up until April. And it will go either direction if we need to start earlier or finish later. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions which council may have.
Okay, thank you. And just to keep, just to inform council, this agreement has already been vetted and passed by county council at our last meeting. So with that, Deputy Mayor Gardner,
No comments.
Councilor Lewis,
No comments.
Councilor Mellon,
Sorry, Jeff, can you explain 6A, why North Dundas is named in here? Such insurance shall add to the corporation in United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, Glengarry, the corporation and township of North Dundas as additional insured. Why is North Dundas mentioned as in the insurance when it's a long way from North Dundas?
apparently you read these agreements better than the clerks do, so we will make sure that gets fixed.
I'll get switched to South Dundas. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Wells, anything?
All good.
Okay, good cooperation between counties and us. I'll call for the vote, please.
Mayor Byveld,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Gardner,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Mellon,
Yes.
Counselor Wells.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next one's the consent agenda, please.
Moved by Counselor Lewis, second by Counselor Wells, that all items listed under general consent of the agenda be adopted as presented, save and except item 9J be moved to discussion items.
Okay, and with that, tonight we have key information report on the South Dundas ash tree removal strategy. Morrisburg waterfront update. We do have a key information report concerning the fall winter community 360 community guide, which will not be out tonight this year. A new capital update, media buy in the Morrisburg Leader, survey results from the COVID-19 and businesses and how they've been affected. Have a petition from the city of Cambridge concerning provincial funding for rehabilitation facilities. One from the town of Fort Erie concerning support for high-speed internet connectivity in rural Ontario. We have a lengthy, and if Councillor Mellon read all this, he'd be still sleeping, report on how Enbridge Gas is going to connect new services within municipalities in Ontario. And that's it, because the rest is been pulled. Vote, please.
Mayor Byveld,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Gardner,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes.
Counselor Mellon,
Yes.
Counselor Wells.
Yes.
Motion passes. So moving on to boards, committees, and discussion items. Our usual list of council representative. Did any council member go to any meeting that needs to be reported to? Yes, Councilor Mellon, that's okay. I figured you would be.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Byveld. Yeah, we did have a South Nation meeting. I'll try and keep it short and painless. I can't even remember the date now. A week and a half ago, I guess it was. I did send out the audited financial statement to staff, and so if any other council member wants to see it, they have it. They ended up with a 358,000 and change, I guess, surplus in the 2019. It was a clean statement. Basically, the money savings came from staff vacancies and leaves, successful fundraising, new project revenue, and increased staff recoveries. So they had a healthy surplus, a little more than maybe I would like to have. Well, it's nice to have a surplus, but anyways, we won't get into the discussion or the suggestion that I made, but it didn't go too far. So in the June meeting in the financial audit, there's an Ministry of Natural Resources reserve, and I asked about it. It's up to 290,000, and there's a contribution every year. And I asked for clarification as to what that can be used for, why it's there. Angela was going to, the general manager was going to get back in the June meeting, let us know what that reserve can be used for. It's, I guess maybe, I don't know, they just keep building that reserve up, and I don't know if there was any idea what it was, what's the purpose of it for, but we'll get some more information on that. We passed the emergency preparedness plan. There was communication and review and feedback from municipalities, supposedly, anyways, what they told us. We had an update on the Castle, the new landslide area from Angela, and what South Nation has been doing in the past, probably for 10 years or so, lobbying the federal government and the provincial government for funding for that area. Approval of applications to fish to collect data on unrated municipal drains, so that file is up to date when you go to do municipal maintenance on municipal drains, and they're supposed to be reaching out to find out what drains could be possibly done in 2022. We won't be on that list because we won't be doing any, but just so that work is already done and ahead of time. They approved funding distribution from SD&G roadside tree program for 20,000 and an SDG woodlot advisory service for 35,000. The woodlot advisory service, if anybody's interested, there is a $500 grant towards having your woodlot advised. More information can be obtained from South Nation website. All conservation areas are open right now except for Camp Sheldrick, which is a Boy Scout, Girl Scout facility. And the usage is, numbers are up in all of them. And I failed to mention this last council meeting, and I apologize for that. Community tree giveaway was very successful in South Dundas, and they're pretty well wrapped up now across the nation jurisdiction. There was a curbside pickup in Morrisburg and Williamsburg, and I want to thank Brenda and the staff at South Dundas for the work they did on that, and Councillor Lewis and Deputy Mayor Gardner for their assistance in being out that day. I got to Williamsburg. I couldn't make it to Morrisburg, but it was very well received. The 2020 tree planting is pretty well wrapped up. There was over 145,000 trees planted on private and South Nation lands by contractors and South Nation staff. They completed the natural heritage planning study for SD&G in United Counties of Prescott Russell. I'm not sure if that's been presented yet or not, but they've got to complete it. The permitting as far in approvals and reviews, if so far this year are up. Actually, the numbers are as good as last year or maybe more so, which somewhat surprised me, but I guess things will continue to move on even in trying times. The floodplain mapping that Mayor Bivels, you had asked about, we paid a portion of it, that LiDAR floodplain mapping. I asked a possibility about maybe a delegation at a council meeting by WebEx or some form like that. It's a little past runoff now, but they are willing, I think, to try that, or at least maybe a written report into us if we wanted to, if we so thought it was necessary. The AGM has been postponed right now until possibly this fall. They're really not sure. So it's going to have to be wait and see for the time being, how everything turns out. The next meeting is June 18th, and they're hoping to have a WebEx or some similar like to what we're doing here now instead of the teleconference, which we've had our last two. It's not quite as productive. It's a little not quite the same. And usually they don't have a meeting in July, but with the pandemic and the limited amount of material that we can get through to in a board of directors meeting when there's 13 13 directors or whatever there's there, it's somewhat limited. So they're going to evaluate it through the end of June and the first part of July to see if there will be a meeting in July. And I think that's about it. Mayor Bybels, any questions? I'll try to answer them.
Okay, any questions from council? I have a few comments, Councilor Mellon. You mentioned that the natural heritage study is completed. My challenge to that is that as much as the pandemic's on and we can't have a true public consultation, then in my opinion, it can't be complete until that gets done, because that's a pretty hefty document that people must comment on, because it could affect their property directly. So I know the counties are involved, and it is truly a county study. So I'll make sure that if it does come to the county table, that gets done, because I know that landowners, especially agricultural landowners, are concerned and want to make sure that anything that affects their property is at least noted, and they have a chance to make a comment or have a discussion on it. So, and floodplain mapping. If we ever get back to something half normal, I know we don't really need it anymore for this spring, but I think that's something that they either have to give us a report or give all municipalities a report concerning that, either A, by delegation, and B, hand the report itself, because that didn't have any issues this spring with flooding on the Lake Ontario St. Lawrence system, but the high water levels are not done yet within the lake systems themselves. So something that we as the council, we as municipality, those who live along the St. Lawrence, and need to know what's going on there. So sometime we're going to have that. We'll keep that in mind. Yes, Shannon?
Just to follow up on that, Mayor, we did have a delegation scheduled before COVID-19 occurred there to have South Nation make a delegation to go over the mapping and to kind of give you a tour of what the mapping's like. So I did have a conversation with South Nation a couple weeks ago. We thought it would be better to wait until we can actually have them come into our council chambers to go through the whole exercise and the project that was done. But if we are delayed as far as getting back, we could have them just do a WebEx delegation if that's what council wants.
Okay. What we could do is monitor the situation, and hopefully by this fall we can either have them in person do a delegation, or if we're continuing on in WebEx, then we'll have them do that, and maybe a committee of the whole, if we have to have one, would be opportune time to have that. That would be a good discussion item instead of a full council meeting.
That's very good.
Okay, that's it for me. Thank you, Councilor Mellon. Ain't nothing else from anybody else? Okay, moving on. We have a request from the Morrisburg OPP to fly the pride flag during June. So is this Jamie's presentation?
The clerk will speak on it.
Okay, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So last year we rewrote the flag policy to fly only the Canadian flag, the provincial flag, and the municipal flag on our flag poles. We didn't take into account, or we thought we weren't going to fly flags from charities or other for other events. This request is asking to fly this flag in conjunction with the Ontario flag. Our flag poles are not set up to fly two flags on one pole, first of all. So there's a few things happening here because we've had some situations this year, some tragic events where our flags have been, citizens have asked us to put our flags at half-mast, but our policy doesn't allow that. So council needs to change that in the policy, or we need to figure out how we're going to go forward with that. Also, we need to figure out if we're going to put the flags at half-mast, are we putting the flags at half-mast at all our locations? Because this flag policy does speak to all the flags at all our locations. So there are about 8 or 9 locations that we would change with about 3 flag poles at each location. Also, we need to consider, are we going to include all the charities in Ontario or wherever that we're asked to fly their flag on our flag poles? So how we want to proceed, we'll have to figure that out.
Okay. I do have something that I'd like to bring forward concerning the half-mast for significant events. But first, maybe we'll decide first if we're going to deal with the specific request. So we'll start with Councillor Wells and go around that way, please.
Yes, I read the letter, obviously, and everything. I know this is a challenging one for, not just for me, but anyways, it's just, where do we, if, like, Madam Clerk said, there's so many different things that we could be doing this, and it could turn into a daily event. Myself, I'm good with the pride thing. As far as doing a flag, I think we stick to our policy and just fly. Now, by saying that, like situations, I guess we could put a clause in that what happened down in Nova Scotia and stuff like that. Sure, but as far as every event that goes on in Ontario, a terrible event, I think it's a cost to the municipality, and I think personally not to do it.
Okay, Councillor Mellon.
Yeah.
Specific request, please, and then we'll discuss the additions.
I haven't got even though it may be logistics thing to fly the flag at the OPP station on a one-time basis because of the circumstances as is outlined in their request that their activities this year, their parades and whatnot could not happen. I could make the exception for this year, but with the understanding that it would be a one-time off event, if you will, for this year, and we'll address the flag issue or the policy after.
Councillor Lewis.
I do believe we have a flag policy for a reason. And I have to agree with my colleague, Councillor Wells. We have a policy for a reason, and I think we should stay with that policy. I know I was a little disappointed with what happened down east, that our flags wasn't dropped to half-mast, but I think we should leave it the way it is, because if you do it for one, that means you're going to have to open the scrapbook and do it for everybody. Thank you. That's just my opinion.
Mayor Gardner.
Okay, I look at this different, Lee. First of all, when we had the flag policy discussion, I had mentioned that we may have requests, and I think we had some discussion about dealing with them at that time. We've been sitting on council for 2 years, and this is our first request to actually fly a flag out of the ordinary. It's not a charity or whatever. The pride flag represents so much more than that. And it is the Ontario Provincial Police that is asking for this. I'm thinking when we redo our policy, maybe we should address location. But on this particular request, I absolutely think that we should agree to this. I think that that flag symbol is symbolic for a lot of different people. I think the youth in our community need to see that we are accepting and willing. And I think that it's very difficult right now for law enforcement to show that they are inclusive. And this is one way that they can do it. So I absolutely 100% think that it should be allowed to be flown at the police station.
Okay, sounds like the mayor has to make the choice. To be honest, I do agree with Deputy Mayor Gardner. I think we have to figure out some way of doing this. I think it's the right thing for the community to do. We need to be as inclusive as we can possibly. I know it challenges our policy, and we may get a few more requests. However, I think this one is specific to a specific flag area. If there's, I will have to leave it with staff. We've been told that it cannot happen because of the way our flags work. However, if they can be made to make it happen, then let's try to do that best we can. However, I don't want to have a new flag up every week celebrating something, because we just don't have the poles to do that. Logistically, it's just going to be a nightmare. So I know other cities do that as a regular basis, but as others have alluded to, we do have a policy for a reason. We're going to have to try to work within it best we can. So with that, I'd say we're going to try to do what we can to put the pride flag up in front of the OPP station. If not, then staff will have to report back to us on reasons why, and then we'll go from there. As for what happened somewhat over a month ago in Nova Scotia, and some of the challenges of using our policy for half-masting, we did do it after a request, and it did make logical sense. I know most members of council will probably agree at that time. So in my mind, something we could add, and this is me writing it down, and I will leave it up to the clerks to write it down in maybe proper form. But it goes as follows. So we would add this to our clauses for half-masting. The head of council, in consultation with the clerk and the CAO, may ask for the half-masting of the flags because of an international, national, provincial, or local event of significance. There's a raft of reasons why I put it the way I did. I believe that, yes, the head of council could push the issue somewhat, but I think I don't want any head of council half-masting for reasons that aren't as good as they should be. And that way, with the clerk and the CEO, it kind of balances it out a bit. As for international, national, provincial, or local event of significance, I would say the events in Nova Scotia were a national event of significance. I know that you would think international is something that may not be in our bailiwick, but if you think back of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, I think if we were all here that day, we probably want to do it then too. So it would take probably a pretty significant event, world event, for that to happen. We have provincial events that occur, and we also have local events that could occur. So I think I'm trying to capture everything at once without making it too encapsulating, I guess. But that would be my first kick of the can at that. So I'm willing to listen to comments or suggestions to make that better. Deputy Mayor Gardner.
Yeah, Mayor Biddles, does that work? Are you still getting feedback?
I hear you. Well,
Thanks, Mayor Blyvelts. I would, I absolutely agree with your wording to start. I think that provincially and federally, there's rules that maybe we could put that if the federal flags are flying at half-mast, then that consideration could be automatic, right? And if the provincial flags are flying for a provincial tragedy, because they make those decisions at a higher level, we could follow suit with that. And then locally to fly them, it could be in consultation, as you mentioned, mayor, CAO, and clerk, or for the local tragedy, potentially it could be a council quorum. I don't know, but I think provincially and federally, it's fairly easy to follow. They have set standards. They don't put it down for every little thing. And at the local level, you may find that maybe a member of council brings something forward that's impacted, that they've noticed or something, or they've heard from the community. So I don't know. I think provincially and federally, at the local level, determine if the head of council and clerk and CAO want to make that decision.
Councilor Lewis.
I agree with you 100%, Mr. Mayor. I think the words that you stated is good. I do believe sometimes that we should be running our flags at half-mast. I would not have a problem with that whatsoever. Thank you.
Councilor Mallon.
Yeah, I your concept, Mayor Bybels and Deputy Mayor Gardner's point, I agree with doing it that way. The only thing, I don't know if we want to do them at all our facilities, all our locations. I think maybe just at our head office, if you will, the Morrisburg office. But that's up for interpretation too. But I do agree with your wording and on how we go about handling that.
Councilor Wells.
Yes, Mayor Byros. I agree with your concept also. Like you said, it would have to be an extreme event internationally to have our flags go at half-mast. And to Councillor Mellon's thing, I personally think we just keep it at the municipal head office. I don't think there's any need. I like to Madam Clerk there. There's 8 or 9 different spots. I think the head office would be good. And as far as flying flags for other things, I'm still think we should stick to the policy. We do this pride thing, then a month down the road there's something else. And since we're on this pride thing, don't get me wrong, I don't know what it's all about. Which is good. That's just my opinion. I think we should stick to our policy.
Okay, so my comment, Deputy Mayor, I would challenge you a bit on following the feds and the province on their a former member of Parliament pass away and they'll half-mast it and we may not want to and stuff like that. So I think most of our policy makes sense. It's just that the extraordinary events that somebody has to kind of say in their head is the right thing to do. I think that I think is what I'd like to cover. I know that your suggestion is from an ease point of view would be easy, but I think we'll be lowering the flag a few too many times too often that people will look and say, why is it down? And if it's, you know, I'm not comfortable putting it down every time they'd like to do that unless it's something that really makes sense. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, Mayor Byvelds, that makes sense. I think I was thinking more when the event happens. Not, I mean, because to your point, absolutely, you know, they have specific months where they put down things for different things. So I completely understand that. I agree with your proposal. I was just trying, as you say, just trying to make it a little easier to navigate.
I want to make it simple but complicated because I don't want, you know, I don't want the flags to not know which direction they're flying every week, because sometimes people will think that every event is significant, and I think we have to kind of keep everything in perspective and make sure that when we do put our flags at half mast, it is for a good reason, and most people would appreciate that reason. So
Yep.
with that, I would throw it back to the clerks to come up with the proper wording. I can send this to them if they wish, but I know that there's probably other ways or other places that have done the same thing, so it could sound a lot better and still do the same job. As for the pride flag, how would you like to handle that, Madam Clerk? Need to unmute, please.
We will
Thank
send an email approving it, and then we will go over and figure out how we're going to fly the flag.
Okay, did you say you wanted the motion to approve it, or just we're good? Okay. We're good with that. That discussion was good. Next one's key information report on pools, hot tubs, and spas, and I'll turn it over to our CBO, Lowy, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. At the previous regular meeting, we brought a discussion forth regarding our current zoning regulations for pools, hot tubs, and private spas, which are essentially oversized hot tubs that you can swim in. Currently, our zoning bylaw requires a fully fenced-in enclosure, and neighboring municipalities allow lockable covers rather than having those enclosures for the hot tubs and spas. So we're looking at two options. I spoke with the planning consultant, and they mentioned that it would have to be a full zoning amendment, so public process. We have to let the public know about the process, go through the council meeting and such. So two options there would be to have a site-specific zoning amendment where the current applicant who has the swim spa would apply on behalf of themselves. Costs would be incurred by them, obviously, but it would be only for their lot, their address specifically. Second option would be for staff to proceed with a general application for zoning amendment, which is essentially housekeeping for our current zoning bylaw. That would allow all applicants who current and in the future who want to install hot tubs and spas with the lockable cover, we would be able to approve those specifically on application. And with that, I added a picture. We have a lot of these swimming pools popping up everywhere, especially with the 30-degree temperatures. These swimming pools, though the public don't know permits are required, they are deeper than the 24 inches per our zoning bylaw, and they also do require the fenced-in enclosure. So if we're doing a zoning amendment for the covers themselves, do we want to do a zoning amendment to include these pools as a homeowner install at their own risk? Thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Gardner, you brought this forward, so I'll start with you, please.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Byveld. I think that the swim spas, I'll speak to both parts. The swim spas are going to be gain some popularity, I believe. I think we should formally address it and have it corrected in the bylaw. And I do believe those lock covers are very safe. I do want to preface this by saying that in the past, I did attend quite a few drownings of small children. So when I saw the picture of the second pool, we will have to find some way to address that. So safety, I believe, especially with COVID-19, that more people are going to be staying at home, and there's going to be more little kids around these pools. And while I don't want to burden the residents, I think even it's a add-on discussion, but even if we involve fire and do an education program about this, because a lot of the young kids that are 4, they won't be able to take swim lessons this year. So there's going to be some issues with the education around water safety and that type of thing. So I'm just kind of putting it in there, but I do believe council needs to have a secondary conversation about maybe being a little bit more aggressive in pool water safety, that type of thing. But as far as updating the bylaw, I mean, you know, to just have one resident off and on apply, I think, you know, maybe immediately that would be good because of the COVID-19 having problems. But I think it needs to be changed. They're getting more popular, and I think we need to address them. The covers on those swim spas are pretty substantial, so I feel very confident. But we also do need to do some education about swim safety and that type of thing. So I think that's going to be important because, like I said, there's a lot of 4-year-olds, 3-year-olds that will not get swimming lessons this year. And we have big bodies of water, not just pools, but also the St. Lawrence River that we need the parents to look out for. So thank you.
Councilor Lewis.
I agree with Deputy Mayor Gardner. I don't know much about these spas. I've never been in one. I think whatever Ms. Lowry does will be good for me. I know she's very good in her profession, so I will leave that in her capable hands. Thank you.
Councilor Mellon.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna say here, the hot tubs and the spas, to me, a lockable cover is only as good as somebody putting the cover back on and locking it. Even a cover that isn't locked, that's put back on, I think can be more dangerous, because if a young child could get into it and the cover back up or goes back and you can't see it. I'm not really in favor of going this route. I'd much sooner leave it with a fenced in area. In our villages and our towns and stuff, not everybody has backyards. There's going to be young children running around, and to me, it can be a real temptation. Should young children be out running around, in their backyard and maybe into the neighbor's yard where a pool or a hot tub spa is. Well, not a pool so much, but a hot tub and a spa, probably, but kids are kids. And I'm just thinking of, in the long run, is it an inconvenience for the homeowner to maybe have to put some kind of fencing area to restrict the access to young children? Yes, it is. But I think the fact that, that there's, I think there's just too much risk with a lockable cover on a hot tub or in a spa. And as far as that other inflatable thing goes, we got to restrict the access to them. I do agree with Deputy Mayor Gardner. There's going to be probably more of them going up with those things. Somehow or another, we got to address them. They got to be, even at 30 inches. You look at that picture that's in the report. I'm guessing that's more than 30 inches. Just by the adult that looks in there. Now, maybe he isn't standing up, but I mean, to me, they're just way too dangerous not to be fenced in or some kind of way to restrict the access to young children. I think there's just too much danger with them without something in there. And as far as the hot tubs and spas, I'm not really in favor of a lockable cover. I'd much sooner have the fence.
Councilor Wells.
Yeah, very interesting discussion. I agree with everyone to a certain point. Deputy Mayor Gartner. I agree fully with that. Councillor Mellon, as far as we got to put, like, municipality, we got to understand, sure, we got to provide safety for our public things, but there is adult super, like, whether people put up a fence or we make them a lockable gate, like, it's here or there. Like, the kids have to be watched. They can't just let someone, whether a fence or a lock, and the kid knows where the key is. So do we make people go and spend money? You take that pool in Nicole's report. Well, it's an inflatable pool. So you blow it up, you fill it up for 2 days. Are we going to make someone put a fence around that? Then every time they blow it up, it doesn't make sense. Like, their safety is number one here. Don't get me wrong, but there's common sense, and adults do have to watch out for their own children. As far as having citizens pay extra money to build fences around a hot tub or whatever, if we go as far as a lockable thing, I think that is more and beyond safety. It's up to the homeowners to watch out too. It's not up to council to make sure everyone's safe at home. Like, we're putting a lockable cover, but do you bring it back to everyone has, like, you put up a little inflatable pool, you put a fence up. So it's this bylaw, I think at the beginning we were just talking about the hot tubs and that. There, I think if you go back in our bylaw, when a pool came to went from 48 inches, I believe it was required to have a fence, and at 54 it wasn't required to have a fence. I think that's still in place. Like, you got to draw a line. It's a simple bylaw, and by saying simple, I don't think we have to ask all the municipality to put up fences around everything. It's as easy as putting a lock on it. It's doing your due diligence, and you got to watch out for your own family. You got to take responsibility for what is in your yard. It's not up for the council to dictate every time there's an issue about little things like that. Like, common sense goes a long ways. Thank you.
Fully agree with you, Councillor Wells, on the common sense, but sometimes common sense must be forced upon some people because we don't need any tragedies that we can avoid. And I'm certainly comfortable with a fully locking super cover on these pool spas. I know it's a new item that's out there, and just looking at a quick peruse of covers, they will do the job and make sure nobody can access the pool when no one's around. I am somewhat challenged on the inflatable pools. I can agree, you know, it doesn't make any logical sense to have fences around them. They popped up and they're all over the place. But the challenge is right now our rules are our rules, and our staff have to enforce them the way they are. I think we're going to change these rules. I think we should go with probably option 2 and have a staff do a general application for a zoning amendment on all this, and it can be brought forth through a public meeting. And when we do such a public meeting, then other people can further make comments, yay or nay, on all this. Going to site specific, I think, is going to be fairly expensive for those spa owners, as much as the spas probably set them back a significant dollar. Zoning amendment is also probably close to $1,000 or more. So that'd be something not a lot of people are going to be too enthused about. So if we as a council feel that pool spa covers are adequate, then I wouldn't go with option 1. I would go with option 2, and let's do a general meeting and have that discussion with the public, and then in the end, council will decide. it's not an easy changing a bylaw. This is our zoning bylaw, which is quite comprehensive, where this has to be applied into. So I think in doing so, we need to do it. We're going to need to do it right. The challenge will be that the current applicant will not be caught in this, and we will not be able to just say, you do it, we're going to change the rules, because I don't think that's right. We need to change the rules before someone gets the chance of doing what the new rules say. So, Nicole, any further comments, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just, with proceeding with the zoning amendment for the spa covers and hot tub covers, do we want to look at an option for those inflatable pools? Because they are pretty reasonable in price. They currently are cheaper than our pool permit. And that's where we have a lot of concerns from the public is if they pay, say, $50 for the pool, they don't want to pay $125 to get a permit plus install a fence around that. So they are popping up all over the place. We had a lot of trouble with them last summer as well.
Mayor Gardner, please.
Just a question and a partial suggestion. With the inflatable temporary pools, is there technology associated similar to our burn permit where folks would buy one of those pools and then they'd register with the municipality, but part of their registration would be an education piece about what the safety expectations are? The permit would be free, but they would have to still go through that process to get a permit. But they'd have the educational component because it seems that people are concerned about that, but we'd still be able to track where those pools are. And I think anyone that would take the time and register and get a permit, similar to the fire thing, is going to comply with the rules. And that might be the way that we can do some education whenever people are without a permit. I don't know if that technology exists, if there's a similar app or if the fire permit app can be modified, but I think that might be the way. It sounds like everyone is concerned about the safety, and I think if you had that where they have to read some safety, some swim safety things and register their pool, that would be an interesting possible solution perhaps.
We can
So I'm gonna,
do that. Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead.
I'm going to be a devil's advocate. So are you going to put these rules up at the boundary of your property? So when some young people come by and they say, oh, a pool, and they go and thinking they're going to go for a swim, they're trespassing. I understand that. But you as property owner are responsible for their well-being, whether you like it or not. Go ahead.
Yeah, they weren't posted rules. They'd be rules to educate the owner of the pool that as the dangers associated with installing this on their property. So almost like, you're agreeing to take on that risk, you're educating yourself kind of thing. I'll be honest with you, the drownings that I attended, and I attended 3 of them, unfortunately, none of those 3 children went to someone else's property. They were actually home with their parents and lots of adults, and they weren't watched properly. So, that might be it. The education component with this is huge. Just understanding, because those pools, because they are temporary, shouldn't be sitting there all summer if the kids only use them one day, that type of thing. So not a sign, Mr. Mayor, something more where we're educating the purchaser of the pool.
Oh, fair comment. Anything further from council? Councilor Wells.
Yeah, getting back to like we said about Mayor Bibles, safety is safety, but how much money, to deputy mayors think 3 individual, and I probably know 2 of them that happened, it's because there was a fence up and there was no supervision. So do we punish everyone that's saying the fence? Like you take a kid, if they're going to run, a fence is not going to, they'll be over the fence in a minute. So I was brought up with common sense. Like if you first of all, you don't go and jump in someone else's pool. But by saying that, safety does come first, but how far do you take safety? can go on and on and on. Like, at the end of the day, I don't care if you put a fence up 20 feet high. Someone will either dig under or climb over and still get a drill. So we just gotta be like this. We just gotta be careful. Like, you lock your, first of all, the amendment was starting just on hot tubs. Now we're getting all into this pool inflatables, which I think we should direct just to what we started the discussion about. And as far as the lockables, that is perfect. Everything, if a kid wants to go and pry it or someone wants to pry it, if the homeowners aren't home, well, you know what? They're going to do it regardless. I'm done on this subject.
Anything else? So Nicole, you've got some comments from council. I think the lockable pool covers are something that work and can be certainly added to the zoning bylaw. As for the inflatable ones, it seems like there is a flavor to at least look at that. So let's add it to that public meeting and then we can figure it out from there.
Thank you.
Okay. Next key information report is on the South Dundas compost site. And I'll call on Danielle to present that, please. Better.
Thank you, Mayor. So in front of you this evening, again, we have some information about the compost site selection. We did discuss looking at our options for compost sites in South Dundas at a committee of the whole meeting that we had in March. So I've come back to you with some options for a compost site, should we choose to have one in South Dundas. So you will see there are 3 options that are outlined as part of that selection process. Option 1 and option 2 are the Iroquois and the Morrisburg composting facility. So again, based on the discussion we had at Committee of the Whole, it was my understanding that we would only be moving forward with 1 composting site. So each of these composting sites would be, we would choose one of the 3. So you can see option 1 and 2 are a little bit more expensive, and that's because there's no existing certificate of approval for those sites. So we would have to go through the ministry required process for that. So all those items are outlined under option 1 and 2. A lot of those options would also need to be approved by a professional geologist or engineer. Those are some things that I cannot sign off on. And then option 3 you'll see is moving the composting facility to the Matilda landfill. So that is a little bit less expensive, and that's because we already have a C of A for the Matilda landfill. So we wouldn't have to do emission dispersion modeling and some other things like that. So it would cut back on some of the costs associated with making a compost site feasible. The only thing that I wanted to caution council about is if we did move a composting facility to the Matilda landfill, it would have to be within the existing waste footprint, which would mean we would be taking space away from a potential expansion. So it would still have to go within the waste footprint. It can't go outside of the waste footprint or else we would have to apply for a C of A. So if you have any questions, I can answer those.
Okay, thank you. Start with Councilor Wells, please.
Danielle, for option 1 and option 2 for the application and consulting fees, like $100,000 for application and consulting fees for, we're talking a compost site. You dump leaves and we roll them around. Like, I can't bring myself to see how the cost is that high. The construction fees, like take Iroquois for example. What is it, like making it bigger, making our footprint bigger as far as cutting trees and maybe pushing back, you know, $50,000 with the excavator go a long way. I'm just looking at these numbers, design, operations, all that. That's probably where a lot of that comes from. As far as getting an actual permit, because obviously right now, both of our sites, there's no license, correct? So, and option 3, I can't see, because if we're trying to get that expansion and to put on the footprint for waste, I don't think is even a consideration myself. I personally, I would stick with 1, but in the report saying about our compost site being closed in 2021, which you and I had the conversation up at Iroquois there last week, I think council we should shut that thing down as quickly as we can, because we've already lost 1 sale due to a compost site. And first of all, a compost site should never ever been put in an industrial park to start with. I think what we should do now, because we're still burning leaves and brush at Matilda, we should shut down Morrisburg, have everyone put it in the paper that they can bring their leaves, brush and everything, and we'll continue burning them, and go with option 1 for Iroquois to get it ready for if it's going to take to 2021. But as far as now, I would recommend that we get rid of Morrisburg as quick as we can, not wait to get Iroquois up and going, because we lost 1 potential buyer. So we have someone else come in that can't see the picture of that industrial park being back to a lot. There's another loss we could endure from it. I would getting 1 done, like for Iroquois, shut down Morrisburg, and taking all the compost as far as leaves and brush. What goes in here every day is you could have a wood furnace back there and support what's going in this Morrisburg one. Just burn everything up until. Thank you.
Danielle, can you respond to some of that, please?
Yeah, I can. So the first question you had about cost, yes, I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Wells. It came actually as a surprise to me to see how expensive it would be. It's not the actual application to the ministry that's expensive. That's relatively inexpensive. The problem becomes when you're doing your hydrogeological testing, and the most expensive is actually the emission dispersion modeling that's required under the ministry application. So it's the EDM modeling is something that is very difficult to do, especially at a composting facility. Unfortunately, it's a requirement for any C of A for any site taking organic matter. So that's where those costs are really laid in. With regards to the construction cost, again, so a composting facility, in order to run it properly, you would want an area that is paved. So not necessarily with concrete, you could get away with asphalt, but you would want an area where you could rotate the compost to make sure that it's the appropriate temperature and it's breaking down and decomposing at the appropriate rate. So that's where that additional cost comes in. And with your questions concerning, closing Morrisburg composting facility, if that's something that the whole of council wants to do, it's something that we can certainly do.
Okay, Councillor Wells, further, yeah.
Yeah, just one. I understand the composting and all the permits and stuff, but what I can't grasp is like a compost site, because I have one actually at the back of my yard, and I just got it on grass, and I turn it just with a little pitchfork, and it does break down. So I can't understand why leaves and everything would have to be put on pavement where you couldn't put on a packed gravel pad and do the same thing. Like, does the pavement is because it holds the water up more to compost it? Thinking the Ministry of Environment or whoever does this is coming up with all this stuff, but yeah. So that's I'm done talking. I did enough on it. So, but I still think we should get Morrisburg shut down as quick as we can, and just do all the burning and everything, and get that back to industrial park. And because I hate to see this council losing 2 potential buyers because we got a compost site there and it's not ready for industrial use like it should have been.
Anything further, Danielle?
I just wanted to say that the asphalt is not a requirement under the ministry. We could not do that. It's just easier to turn the compost when it's not mixed in with gravel and foreign soil. So we can look at adjusting the cost for construction of that facility at that time. It's more so that we're focusing on the consulting fees now, so we can always work on lowering those estimated construction fees if that's something that council wants us to look at as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Mellon.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Byvells. Danielle, and you somewhat answered that with your last statement to Councilor Wells's inquiry on the asphalt. Is there any cost savings in there in those in your list for option one, either option? I mean, that 100,000 is quite a number, and the 50,000, you know, that's quite a number that's jumping out at us. Is there? I can appreciate that everything that you have listed there is a requirement. Is there any cost savings, or we don't need the Cadillac of compost sites. I don't think we should go with the K-car either. But is there? That's my first question.
So what we're looking at, what I'm trying to do is work with the Ministry of Environment to eliminate things that maybe we don't necessarily need. So I'm really trying to work with them because these facilities have existed for quite some time. So trying to get them kind of brought in under a grandfathering system. So perhaps we won't have to do some of those items. However, in my discussion with the ministry, they did want me to bring up option 3 to council to see if that's something that council would consider. If it's not something that council would consider, I will continue to discuss with the ministry during pre-consultation on how we can mitigate some of the costs because they are quite expensive for a pre-existing site.
Okay, thank you. I'm in favor of option 1. I'm like Councillor Wells. I think Morrisburg should be closed down probably sooner than later. I'm not in favor of putting it back to Matilda, even though there might be some cost savings there in the short term. I think we're just hurting ourselves in the long run by utilizing very valuable landfill space. So I'm not really in favor of putting it back to Matilda just because of that. We need everything we can possibly get back there. Question. Here, Williamsburg, as we're closing it, I guess, if you will, is that license still somewhat active? Could there be a compost site back in Williamsburg? If we closed, and we're going to, there's air back there that could there be a compost site in Williamsburg and save some of the money similar to the cost of Matilda? Is that an option? Did you look at that?
So it is an option. However, when we discussed at committee of the whole how Williamsburg is not an ideal site for expansion because it's in a wetland, it's similar to why it wouldn't be a great location for a compost facility, because even though we don't have to spend as much money applying, we still have to apply to amend the C of A to include a composting facility. We could certainly go down that path. It would just be it would be difficult because that's a wetland, and construction of any site or any potential leachable materials into that environment, the Ministry of Environment would be protective of that. So it would be a little bit it'd just be a little bit more work, I think. I'm not sure. They didn't say anything about it when I spoke to them. That doesn't mean that we can't discuss it with them. I can certainly bring it back to their attention and see if Williamsburg is a feasible option.
My opinion is option 1, but I would like us to explore if there is a possibility of Williamsburg without it, running into a huge amount of money. But if it can be done for sort of the same type of dollar value as Matilda, and as you're explaining with the wetland issue and whatnot, but I think there's ways to contain or to I know, well, contain the runoffs if, you know, from a compost area. But I'd like to maybe have a look at that option, Williamsburg, but I'm leaning towards option one and going with the Iroquois facility. That's all for me, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Council Lewis? Oh, you're muted off, Council Lewis.
Sorry. I don't think the same way as my colleagues. I'm a little, whenever I see $100,000, I whoa, compost, that's a pretty big number to be swallowing. The question that I have for you, Danielle, option number 3, Matilda landfill. How much space would we need to take from the landfill to make a compost site there?
So it depends on what we're looking at. So there's going to be a few things that come back to council's attention in subsequent meetings about curbside collection of yard waste, and you know what kind of service level we want to offer the public. If we look at what we currently offer the public, it would probably take up a little bit of space. I can't say honestly, Councillor Lewis, I don't know the exact size that it would be. I would think that the size that we would require would probably take away, you know, a couple years of landfill space, just based on the size requirements for windrows, which are rows of compost. But again, that size of that site could be limited or expanded depending on how council wanted to provide that service to the community. So I can't say for sure, but again, it would be dependent on what you would like to do.
Okay. As I said, I'm not thinking the same way as my colleagues. I would prefer to go down the road of option 3. It's half the price. If we could find out approximately, you know, I think taking 2 years life away from the landfill might be a little on the outlook, but I'm going to go with option 3. I just can't see us spending 100,000 plus 50,000 on a compost site. Thank you.
Mayor Gardner, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Couple of comments. So Danielle, you had mentioned that licensing and bringing up the pre-existing sites was more expensive than starting from scratch. Do you know roughly what the difference in starting from scratch and actually picking the site where you're controlling a little bit more, you know, the outcome kind of thing? Is there substantial savings or is it minimal?
The savings difference. So if you look at the comparison between the Matilda landfill and the Iroquois compost facility, they're about $50,000 in difference, and that's why. So if we were to start from scratch tomorrow, we could actually take that same cost, so that $100,000, and we could pick any spot in South Dundas. So it doesn't have to be at the Morrisburg or the Iroquois facility where it currently is. That's from scratch. So the 100,000 is from scratch, and then that $50,000 amount that's in the Matilda would be what we would have as a base, and that's because we have a pre-existing C of A.
Go ahead.
Follow up. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so the process is because there's going to be a little bit of kickback over selecting Iroquois versus Morrisburg, whatever. Have there been any other sites that were that are fresh sites that we have access to? Has any of those sites been considered if there's a spot in between Morrisburg and Iroquois? I'm not a fan, just right off the hop, of having a compost site back in the country because it's going to be village people that are going back to compost. Most people that have a country property are able to do it on their property. So that's not very user friendly, but is there potentially a fresh area where we could create something that would be kind of the halfway point and also a lot less cheap because we'd get to pick the spot? I don't know if you've investigated that at all.
So I have not looked at other options, to be honest. The Williamsburg landfill, like Councillor Milan suggested, is probably the only other option that I thought might be we would consider. But we can certainly look at property that we own. I'm not quite sure what the municipality owns in the middle, but we could look at that and see if it's feasible. It's definitely an option we could look at. I don't know if Shannon maybe has some insight. He's on here, so maybe he knows what we have.
If I'm looking at property between Morrisburg and Iroquois, the only piece I can think of is to the west of Iroquois by the roundabout. It's a chunk of property we own along number 2. I don't think that would be ideal for that compost site along number 2. I think if we're going to look at municipal property, we probably are out of luck between Iroquois and Morrisburg. It would be an option of looking at private property and looking at purchasing a piece of property from someone else.
Okay. I think as we get this out, you know, obviously investing and to my colleague's point, that is a very big number for a compost site. And when most people think of compost sites, they think of mounds of stuff, all natural. They don't really envision it costing $150,000 to have that mound of stuff there. So I don't want to add extra expense, but I'm thinking we're rejigging our whole way of doing things. And I'm just thinking when it comes to the compost site, only looking at the 2 plus 3 plus the Matilda, but only looking at those 2 pre-existing sites. You know, to the CAO's point, maybe it's not a viable option, but, you know, a spot of land, like, you know, I think of the options if it's a significant savings, like you're talking about half the price to start up somewhere that would be a more neutral space. I think that's important. And to Councillor Wells's point, you know, it's unfortunate that the compost site in Morrisburg isn't located in the industrial park. However, when we did pass what I believe is the bylaw around what we were doing with our garbage, we did give folks a year to kind of adjust. And most people have, you know, adjusted to that. So I don't know. I think we need to search this out a little bit more. Thanks, Danielle.
Okay, so you have you never picked any of the 3 options, correct?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think when we talked about setups, the Iroquois folks have done a good job at setting up their compost site, and it is manned by volunteers, something that hasn't happened in Morrisburg. So if I'm only limited to the 3 selections, I would say that I would prefer to go with 1. However, if we're seeing significant savings and better service to the residents of South Dundas, then I would like my option 4. Thank you.
Okay, Danielle, go ahead before I make a comment.
So I just wanted to add to that. So as part of our pre-consultation with the Ministry of Environment, there will have to be an aspect of public consultation. It doesn't matter what type of site you do now, the ministry requires the municipality to do public consultation. So perhaps if that's something that you would like, Deputy Mayor Gardner, we can start the public consultation process and see where the public would like. We can offer all 3 options, then plus an additional 4th perhaps, and then we can present that to the ministry if that's something that you'd like to do, because we do have to do that as part of our application regardless.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think consultation is a big part of it. This is a big revamp of how we deal with waste in South Dundas, and I think that having the residents have a say and being able to kind of put their thoughts forward, I absolutely think that's an important part. So yes, I think that would be a good idea.
Okay, now I'm going to have a few stays here because I got a couple ideas I can throw on the table. If we had, the challenge with having a new site is that nobody's figured out the $150,000 it was going to cost you to buy the property. So in the end, it's still going to cost you money. On the Matilda site, could we site it Not with, if we had a new C of A, could we site it to the west of the current pile? On land we own.
Yeah, so the land that we own to the west of the landfill, there it's a small, I would say, forested patch. I did look at that, but again, we would apply for a new C of A, but yes, that would be an option.
Okay. Could we set up roll-off containers somewhere within our village parameters on weekends for compostable materials and then bring them back to our site during the week and deal with them?
So that would be, I would say most likely not without a C of A. So even transfer stations, which I know seems like a lot of work, but roll-off containers are required to be operated through a transfer station C of A. So if we don't have a transfer station, we wouldn't be able to do that. What we could do is offer compost events where we could gather leaf and yard waste through a roll-off system once a month or something like that. Or you could consider the curbside option for curbside collection, which will be brought back to for you guys to discuss at a different time. But you wouldn't be able to use a roll-off container system on a weekly basis.
Okay, well, sometimes the simple solutions don't work out because somebody puts a rule in front of it. Okay, fair enough. Because my leaning was to use the Matilda site because the site is there and that is our waste site. However, if we can't, if it seems like it's going to be a monumental task to get people to drive back to our waste site in Matilda from any other area of South Dundas, then that's not going to work out. And I know people have been spoiled, but we're going to land up, someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. I fully agree with Councillor Wells on the Morseburg site. It's a disaster. Just the way we have to run it, and it probably costs us more than, I bet you that site costs us more than we ever think of how much it, when Public Works goes back there with backhoes and cleans it up and then has to burn it all. Like there's dollars gone in a hurry there. So we need to come by the end of this year, that site has to be closed one way or the other. End of discussion. I think that's the way we have to look at it as a council. Looking at option 1 or 3, if my roll-off boxes don't work as well, then, and we own the land in Iroquois, it's been run by paid volunteers. We can continue on. I think council has to recognize that this is bringing compost to a whole new level in South Dundas, to the level it has to be. It's not Orga World or stuff like that, but it's to a level that we as a smaller municipality can live with. So my leaning would be, if we can't do the roll off, to go to option 1 and see what we can do there and go from there. However, if we need, we're going to do public consultations, and let's open it up and see where people want to go, and then we as a council will make that decision with all the information we can make. So Councillor Mellon has his hand up, and I'll go to Councillor Wells.
Yes, whatever site we go to, will this be any type of a user pay system? I'm hoping when it gets right down to it, because this is costing somebody a lot of money, and I know there's a lot of people that use a compost, but there's going to be a lot of people that don't. Are we going to be charging to use our compost site?
Go ahead, Danielle.
So I would suggest that we look at a user pay system. However, I've looked at some other models that some other municipalities that have successful composting facilities, what they do is they actually market their finished compost. So they have a grade for their residents to utilize for free, and then they have a grade that they sell to agricultural and landscaping firms. And while it's not significant in cost for those firms to purchase that compost, it does help subsidize the compost site. So if that's something that council's interested in, I can do a little bit more research to see how we would fund that compost site. especially if you don't want the taxpayer to subsidize it. I can certainly look into that.
Councillor Wells, please.
Yes, a question for you, Danielle. How long would we know if the application for the expansion, when will we know about the landfill site? Because here's just a thought, and if we don't get expansion, if we're not allowed, we can take that, we can make that our land or our compost site easily. Like if it's not going to expand a dump, they'll definitely, they don't care where we put the compost site. So I think as council, we should wait till we see about that instead of going ahead and investing the money in Iroquois right away. And if we do get an expansion, like I'm definitely for not, you're saying about taking 2 years away. And even with our expansion, we were only gonna, I forget, it wasn't a lot of years to start with anyways, for the money we were gonna put. So I think if we wait till we find out about Iroquois and to everyone else, like deputy mayors, like we don't want to go, like people, 95% of the people that use compost are from the towns. Like country people don't use it, we do our own. So like my last remark was wait to see how our expansion application goes, then still stick with one, because I would shut this site down tomorrow if I could. Like I've been here 12 years and would see those bottom here, like it's being abused big time, which we said, we all know that. And as far as to Councillor Mellon's remark about, I think we should get back that we get to cover our costs. Like if it comes, if we had this discussion in the committee hall that okay, if we charge $10 for a truckload of leaves or whatever, and at the end we give back to the municipality, okay, you can have your compost for nothing. And we can sell excess off, but it still has to, I'm a firm believer, whatever the municipality used, whether it's compost, dump, it should be, the money should come back from the users. So it should be a pay system. It's a very good system, like we recover our costs and we don't put it on other people. So but at the end of the day, I think we wait till we see what happens to Iroquois and go from there.
Mayor Gardner, please.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the user pay system for compost, only because originally when compost sites started, it was to prolong the life of the landfill. So it was kind of, that was how the residents were paying for it, by keeping the leaves and yard waste out of the landfill system. I should say I'm not, when I say I'm not in favor, I think that I would have to see how good the product is of a compost site and how the residents would benefit by bringing there. Because what's going to happen is you're just going to have stuff in ditches, those paper bags dropped off in the middle of nowhere, and you won't have people use the compost site. So we won't get the return on investment. The gardeners around that do their spring and fall flower beds and stuff like that. I mean, if they're getting charged $10 to drop back 2 bags, I think that's going to be something like that would not help continue to do what compost sites are supposed to do, which is to divert as much out of the landfill as possible. And it's green, right? It's supposed to be reusable. So I mean, if you could purchase compost that was a good product for your garden, then maybe that's the way to get some of the money back. Thank you.
Councillor Lewis, anything from you?
I have to agree with Deputy Mayor Gardner. I'm not a fan of charging people to take their compost to a site. I think the citizens pay enough money in the municipality. So I wouldn't be in favor of that. And to get back to the Morrisburg compost site, I would most likely have to agree with you, more bivalves. We're going to close it. We close it at the end of the year. I would not close that compost site as of tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay. So it seems like we're leaning to the Iroquois site, but with some public consultation. As much as I like Councillor Wells's idea of user pay, it'll probably get less used than we'd like it to, and it kind of offsets some of the space at the landfill, depending on what we take. We still need to do a fairly education piece to people on what they can do themselves too. And as much as we all say that the village people are ones who use the compost site, there's still those in the country who don't have a big enough lot and still have a bunch of trees and like to get rid of their leaves and twigs and stuff like that and need a place to go. And if I didn't have my big bush up north, then I would have to look for a place to go every fall and spring too. So got to keep that in mind. We got to keep anybody in South Dundas can use the site, and that's the way we have to kind of think it through. So with that, if you have enough information to go to the next step, at least we can go from there. Okay, thank you. Good discussion. Next key information report is options for the vacant space at the Morrisburg Arena, and Jamie's got his name on this one. So Jamie, welcome. For some reason we can't hear you. You're not muted, but okay. No, we're not picking up sound.
I think Brenda is going to help him out to see what the issue is with the audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we got you.
Okay. Thank you,
you.
Mr. Mayor. Hey, welcome. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Staff is seeking Council's feedback regarding 4 options that are presented in the report. For the vacant spot at the arena where the retail business sport fix was. Option 1 would be a skate sharpening and small repair shop. Option 2, we could expand and add a dressing room. Option 3, administrative offices for the Parks and Rec. And option 4, a rental space with small kitchen for programming, birthdays, parties, things like that. Just looking for feedback from council.
Okay, and any preferred options at this time, or just throw them on the table and see what comes up?
Well, option 2 and option 4 provides the most enhanced service to the existing users of the arena. Where option 1 provides the same level of service, and then option 3 provides no additional service to the community.
Okay, good. Deputy Mayor Gardner, start please.
Thanks, Mayor Byvelds. Jamie, I just had a question. Early on in our term, there was discussion about the possibility of using that entranceway as a potential door when we discussed accessibility requirements with the ramp and that type of thing. I'm just wondering if any consideration has been given to that thought process.
That option has been presented, or we did talk about that. You would need to, if you provide an option for an entrance in that area, you would have to add more to the steps going up to the lobby. You would need to add a ramp there as well for wheelchair accessibility. There is a bigger cost to that, but it is an option we can definitely look into further.
Well, I just know that the option of if we redid the front stairs in the main entrance that currently exists at the arena, the price tag was fairly big, was it not?
Yeah, I believe it was, yes.
Okay, and the lifespan on those stairs is coming to an end, are they not?
They are, yes, they are.
So I'm wondering if we commit to one of these options tonight, then we're losing the opportunity to potentially use that as an entrance. If it's the cheaper option. I don't know, but.
Right. That's an option I can definitely look towards for sure.
other than that, I thought the options were great. I do like the providing the service of the skate sharpening and the small repair shop, and the dressing room expansion. I don't know with rental space if do you have a lot of requests for that type of thing
I have
at
not.
the arena?
No.
Okay, so that might be a case where you're just sitting there with empty space, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I thought the options presented were great. I like the things, but I'm cautionary in the sense that if we take away the opportunity to save some money by using that as the entrance for accessibility, we might lose out on an opportunity. So that's my only comment.
Okay. Councilor Lewis, please.
I would say option one myself would be the prime one, because it doesn't matter what arena you go into, they do have a skate sharpening machine. As Sports Fix went out, we don't have anything there anymore, and it would be nice to have a small repair shop. Option two, the dressing room expansion. We've got 6 dressing rooms now. I don't think we need another one. Administration office for Park and Rec. Definitely not. They've got a full-size office upstairs. It's a big room. And option 4, I really don't think that a rental space would be a moneymaker. So for me to pick an option, I would have to pick option 1.
Councilor Mellon, please.
Yeah, Mayor Byvells. I'm going to lean with option 1. I would like to see us go out there and try and find another tenant that would offer somewhat similar services what was in there, and leave us the option with our lease agreement, as Deputy Mayor Gardner has already alluded to, with the possibility of using that entrance or that space for an entranceway if and when we decide to do something with them front steps, and it may be cost prohibitive to do something there. And that was a discussion as we've had a couple different times about. So I'm leaning with option 1. I don't really think we need a dressing room. Option 3, as soon as I seen staff would run a skate sharpening service, that just blew me. Anyways, and a rental space, a small kitchen, I don't think we have enough facilities that somebody could utilize. So option 1.
Councilor Wells, please.
Yeah, like first of all, I don't think any of the options are good there. No disrespect, Jamie, but we have opportunity now since Sports Fix is not there anymore. And I definitely agree with Deputy Mayor Gardner about, we talked about this at the beginning with the former director. And right now we all know the costs to replace those stairs. We're at the point where probably this year or early next year, we're going to have to spend a lot of money if we take that route. To have your rink down at ground level to access it is a very, you look at Chesterfield or any of the rinks, they don't have steps like Morrisburg. Myself, as far as money point of view, the easiest thing would take that room and access the lobby that way. As far as number 1, a skating thing, that lobby's so big you can take a 4-way cubicle and sharpen skates. Put it up for the season, take it down in the spring. But this is an opportunity to save the municipality a lot of money to take that. You're talking as far as the construction aspect, putting a set of double doors in, opening up another thing in. As far as accessibility for a wheelchair, you can buy a wheelchair lift for about $6,000 and you put it in so you can access that way. We would save the municipality a pile of money by eliminating those steps and that ramp not only in the cost to replace it, the cost to maintain it. Every time you get an inch of snow, take one of the recreation guys, they have to go out and scrape them or salt, where you just have one access. I've been in there lots of times. There's lots of room to put an access in there, a wheelchair access, that you can access that lobby. And to sign a term for option one for another skate sharpener for a couple of years, then we put ourselves in the position where we don't have an opportunity to renovate the front of that arena, which has to be done. Like those stairs are, like we've been putting a Band-Aid on it for, I don't know, a while now. So this is, I think we should direct staff to look at option 5, which I'm going to create as, see what it would to be put a double door entrance in, a wheelchair lift, bring it back to council to decide that way and remove the front of that and those doors and close it off. That's my opinion.
Okay, just a couple of comments from myself. I know we did discuss with the former director about using that for handicap accessible entrance. You have to keep in mind that the space that's there is not ground level. It's still 4 flights or at least 4 flights of stairs up. So something has to go up there. The only ground level entrance is the one beside it, which was the old entrance, which was way back when the combines were playing. That dates us all. As for the main entrance we have now, I'm gonna defer to our building side of things. I'm not disputing you, Councillor Wells, but we need to make sure that the ins and outs of that building when it's full are work for everybody who can get out. You go from what you have there, which is at least a bunch of doors and people can get out in a hurry, versus everything narrowing down might be a challenge. So you got to keep that in mind. I was leaning to option 1 as my first option, but to be honest, I still like to keep option 3 in my back pocket. We're going through a review right now with spacing requirements for our staff, and I know that we have one more staff what we'd like to hire, which is a facilities manager, and we have no hole or place for them right now. So where are you going to put them? I know there's an office at the arena. We're tight at our main facility, and I don't like buttonholing people in there in little corners anymore. If there's other spaces at the arena, it is a facility that we can use. So if we made it a skate sharpening facility, we can still, if we needed it as an office, it's still there. But I think we need to have a bit more information to figure out on accessibility requirements and how we're going to get them in and out. That arena is not accessibility friendly. It never was designed that way with the lobby up where it is. Yeah, it used spaces downstairs, but I think it presented challenges long term, which we're facing right now. So we need more information on making sure that if we have to do something there, then let's at least mock it up, see what it looks like, find out all the costs, what we can do, what we can't do, and at least it gives us a bit more information.
Okay. Can do.
Okay, so comments from council on all that? Anything further? Yes, Councilor Wells, go ahead.
I do agree with a little more information, but I'm still in the favor, like it's going to cost us a pile of money to fix what we have in the front. If it comes back that we don't have enough exits, well, then we'll have to deal with it when the time comes. As far as I would have to disagree a little bit with the mayor. Room, like we have that big municipal building room. I'm sure if we got a director of facility or supervisors facilities, we could find a spot somewhere instead of creating another office. But again, I do agree, we need more information. We'll go from there.
Okay. So Council Goodber will direct staff to give us more, have a better look at that as an entrance, and then we can go from there. Fair enough? Okay, there you go, Jamie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, key information report on Ontario Street reconstruction, which is strictly a discussion on the ask from the curling club. If it evolves into anything further, then I will pop back in. So I will first turn it over to our deputy mayor for that discussion. And as I said, if there's more, then I would like to participate. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Byvelds. Okay, Shannon, you're reporting on this?
Yep. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gardner and Council. So this is just a follow-up from our discussion back on April 20th. At that time, the Morrisburg Curling Club made some requests to Council in regards to additional work on Ontario Street. One being expanding the parking lot, which at that meeting has been negotiated between Cornwall Gravel and the Morrisburg Curling Club. So there's no cost to the municipality to get that work done. The second request was to extend curbing, gutter curbing from Annette to Legent. As in the KIR, we did get pricing, and according to Cornwall Gravel, there's no additional cost to add that gutter curbing to that location. So there'd be no cost if Council wanted to proceed with that option. The only other option that the curling club request was the storm lateral. So there is a cost associated with installing this if Council chooses to. As indicated in the report, it's a little over $1,000 plus HST to bring it to the property line, and then an additional $3,500 plus HST to bring it from the property line to the building. And at that time, it would be the responsibility of the curling club to connect. So to give a little bit of context to Council on why the lateral was not included in the original scope, was when we did the work with the engineers. The engineers deemed the storm lateral to be on Annette Street, so it was not included in the Ontario Street scope. So the current project, the way it stands, is all laterals are being brought to the property line to all the properties. So if Council wanted just to do the bring it to the property line, it would be a little over $1,000 plus HST. And if Council wanted to go further, then we add another $3,500 on top of that. So looking for some direction from Council so that we can advise Cornwall Gravel on how to proceed.
Thank you, Shannon. We'll start the discussion.
I have no issues with the $1,000. The 3,500, like I'm sure I think the curling club should connect to like any other one would, if to go that route. We do have a contingency of 100,000, so, and like we all know, Shane, I'm sure that's going to be used up pretty quick. $1,000, I can go, but I would still have, as far as the curling club, like we bring it to their line, if they want to tap into it, that's their prerogative. Other than that, this is everything else. Like they're getting their driveway done, like they're getting the curb done. They're getting quite a bit done here at hardly no cost. Also, I'm good with the extra 1,000. Bring it to their property line, and the 3,500. I'm sure they can come up with it.
Thanks, Councillor Wells. Councillor Mellon?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor Gardner. I can stomach the $1,000, if you will, because we're nowhere anywhere. We haven't got anywhere near enough contingency, as far as I said. I've already said that once. When we budgeted this, we only put 100,000 in for Ontario Street, and it should be 10%. And so there's no money left there, and there won't be any money left there in that contingency for anything. So the $1,000, yes, we could probably do. 3,500. I'm sorry, that would be the curling club bill. If they don't want to do it or can't afford the 3,500, is there any need for us to put the lateral in? Basically, if they're not going to take it at the rest of the way, there's no sense us spending $1,000 on the lateral if they're not going to spend the 3,500, or they can't. Is that right, Shannon?
Shannon?
Yeah, so the other properties where the laterals are being installed, they're being installed just to the property line too, so that any future properties that want to hook into it have that option to hook into. So if council wanted just to bring it to the property line and the Morrisburg Curling Club can't afford it this year, it's maybe something that they can work towards over the next couple of years and get that connected at a later date.
Okay, I can live with that. I'm sort of with Councillor Wells on the $1,000. The only, I guess, if you will, option that I might suggest here to the curling club is if they are, I don't know what their finances are on the curling club. We could write an agreement up and help finance this over a 5-year deal where they would pay back if they're strapped and they need this and they want this, but no more than 1,000. And if they want to finance that 3,500, that's an option I'm willing to look at over a 4 or 5 year period. Sort of like we have done in the past for the odd time, but no more than 1,000.
Thanks, Councillor Mellon. Councillor Lewis?
Shannon, quick question. Has anybody approached the curling club on the 3540?
No, so we've had discussions with the president of the curling club. EVB met on site with them to determine location. So they're not aware of the pricing right now. I wanted to bring it back to council first to see kind of where they were wanting to go first, and then bring it back to the president there afterwards.
Well, I have to agree with my colleagues on this one. I don't mind spending the $1,033. We're not running laterals for anybody else. And they more or less, their parking lot has been extended and gravelled. They haven't spent any money, between Cornwall Gravel and ourselves coming up with the 1,033. I kind of side with my colleague Councillor Mellon. If they are having a difficult time with 35, we will do the 33, and over 5-10 years, you pay it back. But I think for us to spend the 3540 and not do it for anybody else, I just don't think that's right and that's fair.
Shannon, you want to respond?
The only thing I would caution council is regards to if we're looking at financing, this is a private club. We don't want to get into the business of being a bank and lending money out to private clubs. As Councillor Mellon was referring to, we have done it before, but that was for the Marina Committee, which is municipal property. So I think we want to be very careful on how we go down that road as far as, sending money or giving money out over a 4 or 5 year period for private clubs.
Councillor Lewis?
Yes, I'm sorry. I forgot that that they are a club. Yeah, I don't want to go down that road. It's up to I'm happy with paying $1,033 plus the HST and with it. It's their responsibility, not ours.
Shannon?
I think the option that they have is if council wants to go with the storm lateral to the property line, they have that option down the road, either through fundraising or whatever, to get that money if they are financially strapped, and they can install that, next year or the year after, whenever they choose so.
Okay. All right. Any other council member? Do you have anything else to add, anyone? You're good? Shannon, I think that's pretty clear direction with the 1,000 and change, and then the other part of it will be left at their discretion.
Okay, and thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Byvelds, if you're there.
We are. Thank you very much. Okay, so the last thing left is the poll from the consent agenda J, item J, which is all the monthly activity reports. And I understand Councillor Mellon had a series of questions that this generated. Is that correct, Councillor Mellon?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Byveld. Yeah, I had a few on a few of the items. J1, I guess, would be the first one. We'll start at the top. Danielle, you had mentioned in your report, Danielle, I got to get to it, about the park bench policy. And I got to, sorry, you have to excuse me for a second. I got to get this computer to take me to where I want to be. There. Yeah, we do. The last council implemented a policy, a bench policy, I guess, for memorials or whatnot. Are you going to review that? And I'm not saying that we shouldn't review it. That's we can change it, modify it, review it, and that's fine. Just as long as you're going to bring that back to council with your recommendations on for work when you made reference in the work in progress.
So I apologize. Maybe I should be a little bit more clear in my report there. So what we're doing is working with the waterfront committee on where those benches should be placed in conjunction with their waterfront plan. So that's where it says in the report there. So I'm not actually changing the commemorative bench program. It's more so just looking at where those benches placed as well as those trees. So trying again with that tree replacement strategy that came to council today, working with the waterfront committee to make sure that we continue to improve the visual appearance of the waterfront. So that's what that is about.
Okay, I thought you were going to be going out and getting new park benches. Thank you. That clarifies that. I'll continue on if you allow me, Mayor. Head 9, J8.
Just hang on a second, Councillor Mellon. Is there any comments on the park bench issue that Councillor Mellon has brought forth? Okay, go ahead now.
Yeah, J8, I guess, in the general consent under 9. Sarah, this is for Treasury. Sarah, you mentioned in your report in there that the superintendent, the OMAFRA grant was not filed. So are we eligible for that that grant for the OMAFRA for the drainage superintendent?
Yeah, so we're currently working on this application right now with Macintosh Perry for some maintenance completed on the chest drain back in May 2019. So the issue that we're experiencing right now is that the application is typically signed by the drainage superintendent that supervised the work that was completed. So the drainage superintendent that supervised it is no longer with the municipality. So Macintosh Perry has reached out to OMAFRA, and they're willing to accept the signature of a municipal official. So in this case, they said they'd accept the clerk. And just to note, the deadline was extended to April 30th. So yes, we are still late, but we are working on it with Macintosh Perry right now.
Does that apply to the drainage superintendent? The grant for the drainage super? What I read here, it was due on not filed, due January 31st. We get a grant money, I guess, from OMAFRA that goes towards our drainage superintendent, right?
Yeah, I believe that's the same scenario that the drainage superintendent needs to sign that one. Sean can correct me if I'm misspeaking right now, but yeah, we have to have the drainage superintendent on that one.
I just wondered if we're not eligible for that money this year, that's all. I just wondering on that. It goes to offset our cost for a drainage superintendent.
Okay, we good?
Yep. And I guess the next one, if you will, Mayor Byveld, is J9 for our Madam Clerk, Brenda. The 911 program, you've indicated in your report that you're working on that. I know with the COVID-19 and everything's sort of been shook up, to say the least, and maybe stopped. I was wondering, whereabouts are we? Do we foresee getting that up and running and the signs in?
I'll let the deputy clerk speak to that. He's the administrator of it, so he has some answers for you.
Thank you, Brendan. Oh, go ahead, Ethan.
Hey, Councilman, it's a good question. Thank you for that. So far, staff have received 11 applications to date. 5 of those applications were deemed complete and sent to transportation staff to assign civic numbers and start getting those installed. We'll hopefully have those done by the end of the week or early next week. For the additional 6 applications, one was deemed not appropriate, didn't fall within the lines of the bylaw, and the other 5 applications, we're just missing some information, so we're following up with the applicants this week.
Okay, well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. I was afraid that maybe it was going to, get pushed off, get pushed to the back shelf of the COVID-19 and everything. That's thank you for that information, and let's hope we can maybe put another push on to get that more uptake on that one. And I guess, if you will, Mayor Byvelds, the last one is on J10, Shannon, the butternut compensation project. I read in your report in the work in progress, I guess. Please tell me we're done with butternut trees.
That would be the easy answer to tell you that we're done with them, but unfortunately not. So the initial butternut tree compensation that was done back in 2014 or 13 is complete. But as you recall, we sold a piece of property in Industrial Road late last year. As part of that agreement, there was identified 2 butternut trees that we need to take care of. So I'm working with South Nation not only on that property, but the remaining industrial park to see if we can get a plan done all encompassing all the remaining trees rather than doing it kind of a piecemeal. So working with them right now. We did collect some money from the proponent who bought the property to compensate us for the next 5 years for that program.
So it'll be cost offsetting. And so will there be any, like, I know that program, that compensation program can run into a lot of money. And so hopefully, okay, I just wanted to clarify. I thought the first butternut tree compensation program was a dead dog, and we had moved on from it, and but I forgot about the other one. And thank you for that update. That's all I have, Mayor. But go ahead.
Yeah. So once we get the proposal and plan with costs from South Nation, we will share that with council over the next month or so.
Thank you. That's great.
Okay. I understand that our deputy treasurer has an update on the drainage superintendent bit. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Mellon. The question you had on the drainage super grant, that application was not filed because in order to for the municipality to file for that grant, we need specific hours provided by the drainage superintendent for the activities that he or she provided in the prior year, being 2019. Being that the drainage super was no longer an employee, we didn't have access to those hours, and they are specifically required by OMAFRA in order for us to apply for the grant. We did contact OMAFRA, and we did contact McIntosh Perry, and they are adamant that they require those. We could have applied for a grant if McIntosh Perry had time involved in 2019, which they didn't. So that grant is not something we're going to be looking forward to for 2019. Thank you.
That's unfortunate. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, John. Mayor Byvelds.
Okay. The challenge being, Councilor Mellon, is that somebody didn't do their work last year. We didn't have any work done, so you can't blame OMAFRA for not paying us now. So we'll get her next year. We'll have more hours than we ever dreamed of, I think, by the time we get done. Anything else from any member of council on this? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. No notices of motion tonight, Madam Clerk?
No.
Okay, so before I ask the clerk to read the next motion, we will be going into closed session. For those who are on Facebook Live, we will just be dealing with the matters that the clerk will address. Once we come out of closed session, we will close it and then just do our ratification bylaw and adjournment. There'll be no additional business done at council. So just rest assured, we're not going to do anything behind your back. And with that, I'd like to, before the clerk reads the closed session motion, to thank council so far, thank staff for their work. I'd like to thank reporters that are out there on Facebook and all of those who are enjoying our council meetings on Facebook. We do plan on trying to continue on, even if we do go back in chambers, which is a discussion that we will be having soon. We could have that, but we still need to have an audience, and we're going to try to do our best to do so. So, once again, thanks for participating. Madam Clerk, please.
Moved by Councillor Wells, second by Councillor Mellon, that council now proceed in camera in order to address a matter pertaining to personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employee, and litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board.
Vote, please.
Mayor Byvelds?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Gardner?
Yes.
Councillor Lewis?
Yes.
Councillor Mellon? Councillor Wells?
Yes.
Motion passes. Once again, thanks for that, and we will go off into closed session. Thank you.